Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today, sir. Last night I was discussing the importance of this hearing with my teenage daughter. She's in civics right now. And I reminded her that it was 240 years ago when John Adams was trying to explain the difference between an empire and our fledgling republic, and he famously summarized, "We're a nation of laws, not of men." And I reminded her that the founders understood that all men are fallen, we're flawed, and that we have a natural instinct. People have a natural instinct to benefit their friends and seek retribution against their political enemies. And that's a dangerous instinct when it's exercised by someone in a high position of authority at the Department of Justice, obviously. So the founders gave constitutional authority to Congress to monitor all this and to monitor those who are in responsibility so we can maintain the rule of law. And as has been mentioned here today in the hearing, the survival of our republic depends on that. So there's been a lot of discussion this morning about biases of some members of the Mueller team, and we've expressed our serious concerns about former FBI Director Comey's investigation of Hillary Clinton's illegal use of a private server. Of course, it's been mentioned, federal regulations strictly prohibit, for obvious reasons, any DOJ employee from participating in a criminal investigation or prosecution if the employee has a personal or political relationship or affiliation with any person under investigation. Reports have shown, and it's been mentioned this morning, that the lawyers on Mueller's team have contributed more than $62,000 to Democratic candidates and only $2,750 to Republican candidates. The question is, isn't it reasonable for us to assume that there's an inherent bias there?
Congressman, I appreciate that question. I have teenage daughters, and I've had the same sorts of conversations with them. And I can assure you, Congressman, that although I understand the basis for the concern, as I explained earlier, Director Mueller and I have a lot of experience as managers in the department, and we understand our responsibility to make sure that nobody's personal opinions are improperly allowed to impact the investigation. So I can assure you that I've discussed that with Director Mueller, and he's taking appropriate steps to make sure that his investigation is not affected by any bias.
What are those appropriate steps? I mean, let us know what that looks like. I know you've explained it a little bit, but just
yes, sir.
For my daughter back home, what does that look like?
I appreciate it. I think there's several aspects to it. Pardon me. Number one is the tone that you set around the office of making clear to everybody that although they may have personal political views, it's not to factor into their work and they're not to discuss it in the context of their work. Number two, it's the process that we have within the Department of Justice. Nobody does anything on their own. Everything is subject to review, and the more significant the matter, the higher level the review and the more people are involved in reviewing it. And of course, we have external checks as well. We have our Inspector General, our Office of Professional Responsibility. And for any matters that we bring, of course, in the Department of Justice, we need to be prepared to prove our case in court beyond any reasonable doubt, so you need admissible evidence. So there are several levels of checks within the department.
In 2014, speaking of the processes, Attorney General Eric Holder announced a significant policy shift concerning electronic recording of statements. And there was established at that time a presumption that the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies will record all interviews of witnesses and suspects. The question is that policy still in place today?
I believe that the policy had to do only with custodial subjects, that is somebody who's in custody of the FBI, not with mere witnesses.
With regard to the interview of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton about her email server in 2016, was that recorded? Do you know?
I have no personal knowledge of that. My understanding from what I've read in the media is no.
Could you find that out for us specifically?
Certainly.
If it was not recorded, would you have any idea why that would not have been recorded under that policy?
I think the norm would be for a non-custodial interview not to be recorded. That's my understanding.
If it was her email server, wouldn't it be implied that she was a custodian of?
No.
Not at that time?
That policy only applies to folks who actually have been arrested and are in custody at the time of the interview.
That's not the way I understood that policy, but I'll defer to you on that. But if you can't get us follow-up information on that, it'd be helpful. Earlier this year, certain names of individuals were apparently illegally leaked who were caught in a FISA surveillance investigation, and obviously when something like this occurs, it's absolutely irresponsible and egregious that a leak on that level would ever happen. Can you inform this committee on what is currently being done within the DOJ to investigate potential FISA leaks? Just emphasize that for us.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. The Attorney General has made it a very, very high priority for us to pursue any leaks that are in violation of the law. So when we receive a referral from an intelligence agency that they believe there's been a leak of information within their jurisdiction and that they believe a criminal investigation should be conducted, We give that a very high priority. We've set up a new unit within the FBI to conduct those investigations, and we have attorneys within our National Security Division who are specializing in that, and we are monitoring those cases to make sure that they move expeditiously. Obviously, as you know, there are challenges in proving a leak case, but we are giving those extraordinary attention.
I'm out of time. I yield back. Thank you.